The next definition is existing wall anchors. That's a pretty easy one, an existing wall anchor. They vary in design slightly. They're all doing the same job. Some do it, in my opinion, better than others. And an existing wall anchor is simply this. In mostly retrofit construction, meaning the building's already up, you're not tearing the wall down, you're not toothing out block to put a new frame in to then backfill it with mortar or use a grout pump like a baker's bag and shoot mortar down the top of the frame after you've drilled a big giant hole in the header and the jamb. You're basically going to take an opening, an existing opening, a hole in a wall, you're going to slide a door unit into it and you're going to bolt it. That's an existing wall, and you need an anchor for attaching a frame to an existing wall. There's lots of different anchors, and there are anchors for basically every application. And Seco, in fact, does a really good job at hitting every requirement. And in fact, other companies like Gulfport Industries, they make piece parts for the hollow metal industry. They've got many that I've never used because it's just variations on a theme. But when it comes to existing wall anchors, the goal is to get a frame attached to a wall using a bolt, a screw, some mechanical means of using a fastener to attach it to the wall. And the existing wall anchor doesn't anchor the frame, it facilitates the anchoring the frame. Specifically, what I mean by that is if you had a 3/8 by whatever length, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, custom length sleeve anchors, flathead bolts that when you tightened the flathead, it would force flanges over the head of a bolt and it would splay them out like that. Okay? Or you would use a number 24 by 6 flathead wood screw. Why flathead? Well, you'll dimple the soffit of the frame so the bolt is, the head of the bolt is flush. Sometimes you'll see just a hex cap, a hex bolt, a lag bolt, or a hex cap machine screw, whatever is being used. Not really ideal to have a big bolt sticking off the soffit of the frame, but I've seen it. And so you're going to use some bolt, but the existing wall anchor isn't that. The existing wall anchor is what goes in the throat of the frame and assists the bolt in getting its job done, and primarily what it assists in doing. Okay, I paused that video and got up, and here's an example of an existing wall anchor. Sometimes these types of anchors are referred to as butterfly anchors. You catch my drift? This is meant to go into the throat of a frame. I happen to have a curved style hollow metal frame here. Not common, but not unusual. And you simply take this and you bend it according to your jam depth. And this frame actually works really well, or this jam depth actually fits in tightly. So you bend it, and then what you end up doing is you tack weld it here and hold it in place. Now imagine that there's a dimple here. The entire roll of this thing, and you'll notice that the back of the anchor is flush with the back of the frame, quite close, because what happens is without an existing wall anchor in the throat of the frame, you will, guaranteed, take that jam and you will crush it, collapse it as you tighten the bolt down. Without this, you won't get many turns until you really start to bend this in. So existing wall anchors are meant to simply give rigidity to the jam when you're tightening it down with the anchor that you're going to use. So a T-anchor or a wire anchor or a metal stud anchor, that's the anchor. That's the part that you're using. This does not anchor the frame. It's weird to call it an anchor because it's part of the fastening or anchoring system. You always need something in addition to this. These vary in design, very commonly called butterfly anchors by some people. I started in the industry knowing them only as pipe anchors. Pipe anchors was, I think, the term that Kewanee literally used. And what they did back in the good old days is they literally had very, very heavy gauge black steel pipe that you would use for air, like compressed air lines. And they would have a strap of metal that they would have a hole in it. And the length of the pipe went from the backside of the soffit to the underside of the plate. And you would take the plate and you would slightly bend it. And you would snap, it doesn't snap, you would just rotate it in. Then you would tack weld here and here with that flange touching the backside of the return, and you would grind that ever so slightly. Once in a while we'd have a customer complain that the weld was too high. It's never too high. It's always dressed. Well, I shouldn't say it's always too high. It's always dressed. Maybe it wasn't. And that absolutely gives rigidity to the entire structure. Kewanee's pipe anchors were so thick that it was impossible to crush that frame. And I can tell you that we did certainly have clients that liked that anchor, although it was quite expensive. By today's standards, you don't see anybody that makes those because they're really expensive. That would be really expensive to duplicate that. You can also use, you can make these in the field if you need to. I'm not saying that you'd grab electrical conduit and cut and drill and weld, but, it's in essence what it is. That heavy Kewanee pipe anchor was also superior to this because what we would do in the good old days, we would take the jam. Customer wants an existing opening, pipe anchor prep we would call it. And generally what you do is in an existing opening, we would use one additional anchor more than what would be considered standard. Okay? And what that means is if you're going to use 3 T-anchors on a 7.0, we would use 4 pipe anchors because you kind of got to plan that one of those bolts aren't going to hit. They're going to hit a hollow spot in the block. And I've had customers in the past they've asked me to make them custom length sleeve anchors because they knew 6-inch, 5-inch, that's just going to hit a hollow spot. So I've had people say, I need a 12-inch. And I say, no problem. I'll take 6s, I'll cannibalize the parts, I'll weld together what I need, and voila, you'll have long bolts. And in fact, I should actually look into just having those on the website and make a note. I can make up 50 of them, 9-inch, 12-inch. Really what the idea is to have a block and know exactly how far in you have to go. The problem with block, it's porous and it crumbles. Anyway, existing wall anchor. What we would do in the old days, client wants a pipe anchor prep or an existing opening prep, 307, whatever the size is. We would take the jams and we'd lay them down. And we would mark on the jam where we want the location for the existing opening anchors. We would then dimple the soffit, that's the soffit, by whatever means, drilling a hole, having a dake press with a die set in it. That's a nice way to do it. We've done it that way, obviously. Before having a dake press, we would literally mark the holes. We would drill an 1/8-inch hole, 4 times, let's say. We would flip the jam over, and we would center our pipe anchor over that 1/8 of an inch hole. We would weld it. We'd flip it back over, and then we would use not a very high-tech tool, but a railroad spike that's been ground down to a point. We would then take that spike and we would whack the daylights out of it, and we would countersink it, and then we would clean it with a 3/4 Irwin high-speed steel countersink. The pipe anchor welded in first is what prevents you from crushing the frame down. If you do that without the pipe anchor, it's not going to work. Now, a butterfly anchor, existing wall anchor, it's not going to do that job. You're really going to need the dake press for that. And if you want information on the dake press and how that works, let us know. I have a dake press in my shop. I have a die set. I can just tell you now, dake presses you can buy from lots of people. The company that I used for the die work is Cleveland Punch and Die. The fella's name over there is Mike. So Mike, sales engineer at Cleveland Punch and Die. They're in Ravinia, Ohio, 666 Pratt Street. They make dies, and they have some experience making a die for this application. So you can use a railroad spike. Not recommended. You're going to lose your hearing. You're going to break your wrist. You're going to need a 4-pound mini sledge. You can also use a frame dimpler. We sell those. At the end of the day, it's a two-piece system that you're going to tighten a bolt down and it will dimple down. People buy them from us. We stock them. People use them. I've tried them. You need a really long lever on there to get that to dimple. So for me personally, it's going to be a dake press. That's just how I would do it. So, but you wouldn't really take the 1/8 inch hole. We would then go back and drill a bigger hole so that we're really not trying to punch with a ground down railroad spike that much. You'd increase that size. And I don't remember what we increased it to, 1/4 inch, whatever the case is. You'll have to experiment with that completely. So in the world of existing wall anchors, they're part and parcel to the solution of getting a frame installed in an existing opening, but you'll always want something behind the frame. If you don't put anything behind the frame, you're gonna see it crushed in, certainly after the frame is painted. That's just going to be a problem. I've seen it. I've been in the field and can always tell when they installed it that way and crushed it in. The problem is if you crush it in too much, you really deflect where the door is going to sit, and it's going to be bound. It's going to want to spring back open, things of that nature. If it's done enough, the latch will be so tight against the inside cut of the strike, it's just not going to work really well. Every manufacturer of hollow metal doors or piece parts like Gulfport and others, they're always going to have their own variant on this stuff. So you're just going to look at the product offering for whomever you like and take a look. In the spirit of that, let's switch to the screen view and we'll take a look at, I guess, the Curry's catalog or the Curry's technical manual. Let's do it. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, and up here on the page is Mike's information. Nice fellow, really nice fellow. I do recommend them. By the time you're seeing this video, he could be long retired. But I would imagine Cleveland Punch and Die, established in the 19th century, they'll probably be around by the time you see this video. Let's take a look at manufacturers. Control F, Curry's. I happen to like their technical manual and their product. Let's look at shop manual. I'm not sure if that's helping you get established as a hollow metal shop. It's got a glossary in it. Oh boy. Not another glossary. Yeah, this is just, oh wow, I love it. A hand punch for doing work. I'm not sure what they're doing here with a Roper Whitney. It's definitely probably not going to be, well maybe it is. Handy document. If you want to get out there and do some work in the shop. Curry's is not the only manufacturer to have a shop manual. I believe Kawani had one as well, and there's certainly others that do, but I really find that I find that if you have a hollow metal shop, you're going to have people there of varying degrees of experience. In my experience of having a metal shop with many employees, the experienced people tend to just isolate themselves and not contribute to the success of people with less experience. I think that management should routinely review this catalog on a annual, semi-annual basis, these outlines, and put on a clinic. Anyway, PSA over. So I'm looking for obviously something that refers to an existing wall, preparation, mullions, hardware preps, reinforcements. That is a pocket or a Harmon hinge prep. Setting frames, really, really important. You'll want to probably, this is a great section where you can send it to your client whenever you send a, you know what's fun is whenever you sell a hollow metal door and frame to a new person, send them the manual. Say, don't install it the way you want to, that you were about to install it. Read this first. So that when they call you and you've got a hinge bind or a frame that's towed or kicked out or something's occurred, you know, you kind of supplied the data. So nothing really here on the shop manual for our purpose. So let's just go to the technical manual. Let's type Control F, existing wall anchors. Yeah. Common walls for masonry anchor. Yeah, awesome. This is kind of what we're talking about on a pipe anchor. Or butterfly anchor. The concept's the same, but you see now how it's not an anchor. It's really a stiffener is what it is. And, you know, what's interesting is they do not show this in a block application because you're going to hit a hollow spot in here. The bottom line is, in order to get something installed using T-anchors or a wire anchor, you're going to need to... Got a wall. Okay. What you're going to really need to do is the mason's going to have to come in and create these tooth preparations. Then the frame's going to go in here, obviously, and that anchor's going to go in here. And then they're going to be able to reset that block or notching it like this and giving yourself something solid to attach to. So what would really happen here is this preparation of the wall would occur, the frame would go in, the anchors would go in, and then you would put your block in there. This would actually be taller for a couple of course of block. And then what some customers do, not often, they'll drill a hole up here and use a baker's bag or a grout pump, and they'll fill all that. Okay. You know, that's certainly one way to do it. Another way to really consider doing it as well, and you know, I like it, is whatever this dimension is, if possible, go with this type of application. Wrap the wall, encapsulate the end of the wall, and this way you can be more strategic with how you install things. Meaning, I have been involved in taking angle and attaching it to the wall here, and I'd butt my frame up to it, and I would literally weld it together. Because I can take the angle, and I can attach it, or through bolt it. I've also had people through bolt here. I've had people take this and add wood here, because they can anchor it solidly, and then they simply anchor it through the soffit. So, installing a frame is really limited only to creativity, in my opinion, but they're clearly showing you a solid wall like precast. They're not showing you block, which is exceptionally common. Okay? Block is problematic. Other instances, you're going to have cement block, but then you're going to have, you'll have face brick. Okay, so how do you do all that? You know, so you can get into unusual frame preparations should you need to kind of counter that scenario. So it's my opinion that when you approach an existing wall installation, that you do allow ample time to get your hands on the most appropriate derivative of door, frame, of anchor type that really suits the requirements. Because there is absolutely no comparison between the integrity of this installation and the integrity of this installation. I have had people tell me that the majority of people hate wire anchors. Hate them. They don't want them. Why'd you give me those? Are you trying to cheat me? No. I've had people take the corrugated T-anchors and have told me they've been able to pull them out real easy. The minority of people want wire anchors because around that piece of wire, it is solid. This is all solid continuous. This is not solid and continuous, even though it's corrugated. Anyway, existing wall anchor. So that's a great example of one. Let's go to the SECO technical manual just to see if there's what they show for this. Manufacturer's page, technical manual, existing, bingo. Okay, so this is a butterfly anchor is what they would call that. Cam lift hinge, okay. I love welded in T-anchors, love those. They call it a masonry strap versus welded in T-anchor. That's a T-anchor, but I like them welded in, because you can't forget them on the dock when your driver leaves to deliver the frames to the job site. They're already welded in. So here you go. Shows that dimple to a certain extent. And this is what we're dealing with. Not really sure what we're showing here. It just must be a drawing artifact that doesn't belong there. Just looking to see if there's anything new. 3/8 by 6 Powers lock bolt. It's called a sleeve anchor. Yeah, I'm not feeling it. There needs to be some stiffener in here. That's gonna crush in. Let's see what else there is. This smaller depths may require existing opening anchors to be located on the door rabbet. So that makes me think of this. You have a typical 5 3/4 frame. What if you had a 19 3/4 frame? You're literally going to make custom pipe anchors like this. Okay. Also, I do work with a client who very routinely orders from us single rabbet 3-inch jam depth. That's tricky. It's not impossible to see a bolt down in the rabbet of the frame. That's where the door sits. That's the rabbet. Okay, down in here you can't. That's the soffit. You can't get anything to that. Okay, and I've also had customers tell us, based on the composition of the wall, if you recall our earlier example of some sort of weird wall construction, that they'll say, okay, I want to put a bolt here and then I want to put a bolt here. So these centers can sometimes be unusual as well. And as far as I'm concerned, no problem. Oblige that request. How would you make the pipe anchors? Get yourself, you're going to charge the client for this, get yourself some black compressed air pipe, and then you're going to use the reinforcement that you would find on a flat reinforcement for a closer. Going to be expensive anchors, but the client is giving you an outline of what they require, and you would quote it and price it and build it accordingly. So let's see what else. Yeah, and obviously borrowed lights. You can do existing wall anchors on borrowed lights, etc., etc. Yeah, okay. So yeah, here's another anchor, concept of an anchor. They obviously have a stiffener here with some sort of a bolt that's not countersunk or dimpled. I'm not sure why, but doesn't really matter. And I think the moral of the story is it just really depends on existing wall anchors. Again, limited to imagination. So I think that's all I have to say about existing wall anchor, except to say see anchors. So let's go up and see anchors. Anchors, which happens to be much earlier in the glossary. Adjustable floor, compression, existing wall. Here's a great picture. That's what I would call a pipe anchor. That does the job pretty well. It'd be better to show that countersunk, but this is obviously assuming you're going to use a hex bolt with a washer, I guess. Really don't want that projecting into the opening. Fixed floor, that's just a floor anchor. That's a welded in T-anchor, wire anchor. Those are mullion anchors. Floor anchor, or sill anchor they call it. That's if you've got a side light frame, it's pretty wide. You're going to want to keep that from kicking around at the strike mullion. Steel stud anchors, wood stud anchors, and that's it. Okay, let's see what the next definition is. Where are we at? Existing wall. Expandable frame. Yeah, I could probably go on about that for a minute. Let's jump in about expandable frames. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.